I've seen some people in the comments of previous videos I've done try to deny it, but it's clear as day now that Team Wilder are not at all keen on this Andy Ruiz fight. Now, the reasons why they're not keen on it, we can only speculate on. Some people might say that it's a stylistic issue that, let's say, Shelly Finkel and other members of Team Wilder see. They think it's a risky fight, which is different to what many boxing fans seem to think. They think that Wilder just walks through Andy Ruiz. But again, Team Wilder would rather fight AJ than fight Andy Ruiz at this stage. And they have never been this keen on fighting Anthony Joshua before. Obviously, Eddie Hearn has said in the past couple months that he reached out, I think even before the rematch with Usyk, he reached out to Shelly Finkel with a view to making the Anthony Joshua Deontay Wilder fight. But in this instance, Shelly Finkel has never been so positive before about AJ versus Wilder. He said, Deontay is willing to fight Anthony Joshua next. We would take that fight in the UK or the Middle East, and we will do it next. We have the WBC eliminator with Ruiz, and we will do that, but we want the Joshua fight. He says, Eddie Hearn said he contacted me in August, but we had the Hellenius fight. We announced it that month and said we won't talk to anyone until after the Hellenius fight. Eddie knew this, but he still, but still said he had contacted us. He goes on to say, now we are willing to talk to make a deal for Joshua next. With that being said, Hearn has previously said Dylan White is the front runner to take on AJ next year after beating Jermaine Franklin last weekend. I'm now actually quoting from the Boxing Scene article. Let me quote Shelly Finkel again. He said, but even if Deontay beats Ruiz, the Ruiz fight is there, and we will do it if we can't get Joshua, but even if Deontay beats Ruiz, we are still willing to fight Joshua. We are worried that he might want another tune-up if he fights White and doesn't look good, so we should go straight into that fight next. We understand Eddie could want the White fight, as Joshua has lost twice to Usyk, but the fans would like to see Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua, and we are willing to do it. Let's make a deal. So again, I've never seen Team Wilder so keen on fighting Anthony Joshua as they are right now. And why is this? Well, there's two reasons. Firstly, I think Finkel sees it as last chance saloon for Deontay Wilder. His fighter is in his mid-30s at this point. Is he 36, maybe 37, Deontay Wilder? So it's all about cashing him out or cashing him in, however you want to look at it. Going for the biggest paydays possible. He's already been wiped out by Fury, so they don't particularly want to go down that WBC route because it's basically a dead end, yeah? And I'm not saying they don't have any concerns about Ruiz because it might be that as well. But let's say he goes in there, beats Ruiz, becomes mandatory for Fury. His people don't believe he can beat Fury. I know Malik Scott has been saying it, but does Shelly Finkel believe it? I'm sure he doesn't. So from the business perspective, Finkel would much rather Deontay fight somebody for big money because he's likely to get more money fighting Anthony Joshua than he would fighting Andy Ruiz or a fourth fight with Tyson Fury at this stage. So I'm sure Finkel's thinking, let's get AJ. It's a bigger money fight. Deontay hasn't lost to him before. And also, AJ's coming off 2 losses. I'm sure Finkel at this stage feels that his fighter is more confident than Eddie Hearn's fighter, Anthony Joshua. Maybe he feels like this is the best time to catch Joshua, just like with Tyson Fury, trying to fight AJ coming off back-to-back defeats. Maybe Shelly Finkel has got the same idea for Deontay Wilder. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about Finkel being bullish, being really keen on having this fight with Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua. You know, he talked about Eddie Hearn playing tricks and trying to make it look like he's interested in the fight when he's not really interested. Well, is Eddie Hearn doing that right now? It's possible. But if you go back and look at the track record of both of these camps during this Anthony Joshua-Deontay Wilder rivalry, then there's absolutely no doubt about it that Team Joshua have made far more effort to make a Deontay Wilder fight over the years than Team Wilder have. And nobody can ever downplay that $100 million plus deal that DAZN offered Deontay Wilder to fight Anthony Joshua. It wasn't some Eddie Hearn trick. It was the big wigs, the top brass at DAZN, sitting down in a room with Finkel, with Wilder, with a contract right there, 100+ million. He was going to fight Dominic Breazeale anyway. That was his mandatory. So that was part of the DAZN deal. And then 2 fights with AJ after that, 100+ million. Sign the contract. Deontay Wilder didn't do it. So nobody can try to say, no one with any credibility, nobody who's being objective can possibly try to say that AJ's team didn't try and make that fight in the past, because they absolutely did. I know Shelly Finkel's trying to spin some narrative now, and maybe things have changed, right? Anthony Joshua isn't the big A side that he used to be. Maybe his team don't have the same kind of confidence in him that they used to have. I certainly believe that they swerved the Fury fight earlier on this year, whereas in previous years, they actually wanted the Fury fight. Things change. Fighters go on the slide. Is AJ on the slide? I don't know. But I certainly think that Eddie Hearn is going to be a lot more careful with AJ now than he was, let's say, when AJ was champion, when AJ was still undefeated, etc. So that's my take on it. Now, if the fight were to happen, and do I think the fight, I don't think the fight will happen next. I know Eddie Hearn has said in certain interviews, yeah, would be willing to go into the Deontay Wilder fight next. I'll be very surprised if they did that. I personally think that they're going to want at least 1 fight, if not 2, before Anthony Joshua was to face somebody like Deontay Wilder or Tyson Fury. And it would depend on how good Anthony Joshua looks in those fights, I would think. One opponent who they've talked about for AJ rather than Dillian Whyte, because again, Eddie Hearn has been kind of non-committal since Dillian Whyte's fight against Franklin about whether AJ Whyte is going to happen next. I don't know whether that's because Eddie Hearn doesn't think it's a good idea for AJ to fight Whyte, or maybe he just wants to make, the maximum amount of money from both, and that might not necessarily be achieved by matching them against each other. Maybe he thinks he can make, I don't know, Dillian Whyte versus whoever, Wilder, and then AJ versus Fury or something. You never know what Eddie Hearn is thinking, what strategy he's trying to come with in his head from a business perspective. But again, one of the people that has been mentioned for AJ, even though he officially lost the fight, is Jermaine Franklin. I don't think that would be a good choice. I think AJ can beat Jermaine Franklin, but I think he's going to be a tough guy to look good against. I don't see AJ going in there and blasting him out or anything like that. Jermaine Franklin is a slippery character, slipping and sliding, and he's shown he's got a good chin. So I don't think that's a good fight for him, and he's not going to be going up against anybody unless he fights Andy Ruiz again, who's a tool similar to Jermaine Franklin stylistically or in stature. So yeah, I just don't see the point of fighting a Jermaine Franklin. I think if he's going to fight somebody who at least used to be a marquee fighter in terms of, the commercial value and all that kind of thing and name value, it would have to be Dillian Whyte. If he's going to fight anybody in his next fight of that type of name, then yeah, Dillian Whyte would make sense because he's already beaten him before. Dillian Whyte is very vulnerable in terms of punch resistance now. So that one right there. But if not, then I think AJ should just fight a much lower level opponent because he's coming off 2 losses. And that's what people coming off multiple losses who have, confidence issues, that's what they tend to do. When Mike Tyson came back from the Buster Douglas defeat, he didn't jump in with a top 10 heavyweight. He fought Henry Tillman, right, which was a 1-round blowout. He fought Alex Stewart, who was a better fighter, but that was still a 1-round blowout. Then he fought Razor Ruddock, which were much tougher fights, right? The first fight, I think, ended in the 6th or the 7th round, and that was, at the time, deemed a controversial stoppage. And the second fight was a much better fight, and that went the full 12. Okay, so Tyson had a couple of blowouts before he went in there with someone who could actually give him some real work. Mike Tyson, I'm talking about here. Same thing for Lennox Lewis. When he got knocked out by Oliver McCall and he had confidence issues, because of getting knocked out in 2 rounds by McCall. They didn't throw him straight back in at the deep end. They gave him a journeyman in Lionel Butler, another journeyman in Justin Fortune. Then they gave him Tommy Morrison. Then they were supposed to fight a few years prior. Morrison wasn't the fighter he used to be. All right? Yeah, Lennox Lewis still went in there and beat him. But that was not Morrison firing on all cylinders. And obviously, after that fight, Morrison's career was over. For, well, reasons I guess all you guys know about. So, yeah, Lennox Lewis was brought back slowly and his confidence was built back up before they put him in with Ray Mercer, which was a tough fight for Lennox Lewis. The first tough fight on his comeback from the McCall defeat. So this is how it's always been done, folks. When fighters are coming off bad losses or back-to-back losses, and there's a confidence issue, why would you sling them straight back in at the deep end? That's a cash-out move. That's what you do when you feel like you've got a shot fighter, where you don't think he can beat anybody good anyway. So you just sling him back in there against whichever top fighter wants to use him as a punch bag to make a few quid. I mean, Zab Judah, after a few years, when he got knocked out by Costa Zoo, he kind of turned into that fighter. Shane Mosley kind of turned into that fighter. You guys remember that period where they were always recycling Zab Judah and Shane Mosley? So if you're going to throw AJ in off back-to-back losses with Tyson Fury or Wilder next, then he's basically just, being used as a washed-up fighter who his people don't believe in anymore. And maybe he is. I'm not saying he isn't. There are certainly a lot of people who do believe AJ's washed up. There's even prominent people in the boxing game who think he's done, he's finished. So I guess time will tell and we'll see. Personally, from a psychological perspective, I can understand why people think this, with the meltdown in the ring and the funny stuff he's saying. But he hasn't taken that much punishment. He hasn't been in a load of tough fights. He's had 2 tough fights, really, in terms of taking punishment, which were the Klitschko fight and the Andy Ruiz, the first Andy Ruiz fight. You might say the Dylan White fight as well. So let's say 3 tough fights. Other than those fights, he hasn't been taking a load of punishment. He hasn't had loads and loads of tough battles. So to me, you're only as old in boxing terms, and this isn't completely true because, of course, Father Time is undefeated, but generally, you're only as old as the number of fights you've had and the amount of punches you've taken. AJ hasn't really taken that much punishment. I personally think he's a lot fresher, and he's got a lot more left in the tank, at least physically, than Dylan White, for example. So that's just my take on it. Give me your take in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about Shelly Finkel. All of a sudden, if only we'd had this energy from Shelly Finkel 2-3 years ago, then the AJ Wilder fight would have already happened. Maybe we would have had an AJ Wilder trilogy instead of a Fury Wilder trilogy if Finkel had had this same kind of energy back then. Anyway, if you're tired of the biased narratives and mass censorship on mainstream platforms, and you want to be part of a community of critical thinkers who love free speech just as much as you do, then come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide variety of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&As, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalog of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high quality MP3. We've also got an Element group where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. Unlike Discord, it has full end-to-end encryption, is decentralized, and is 100% censorship free. You can also send voice notes as well as much larger audio and video files than you can on Discord. So come and sign up on Patreon. There's no contract, there's no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a cup of coffee.
So I'll see you over there. I'm out.